Welcome to our very first filming of In the Library. Today I'm excited about our topic on priests in ancient Israelite traditions and early Judaism. The Bible mentions these people, but sometimes we don't always understand who they are. Moreover, they often appear in composition, and they are part of the writing of the Old Testament, and it really helps to understand who these people are that are writing this very important material. So today we have the world's expert on this subject, Dr. Stephen Cook. Stephen earned his PhD in biblical studies at Yale University, and he now is the McBurney Professor of Old Testament at Virginia Seminary. So we welcome Stephen Cook. Steve, we welcome you today, and I'm really excited to have you here to talk with us about the priests. Tell us about these kinds of holy men in the priesthood.
We don't know everything, and there's still a lot of questions and work to be done, but we do know some things about them. We know, for example, that besides the priests that are mentioned in Scripture, there were many other types of priests around. And sometimes the priests that are denigrated in Scripture, like the ones that the first king of the northern kingdom, Jeroboam I, appointed, the Bible thinks that they were not appropriate priests. They were taken from parts of society and that were outside of the regular lineage of the Levites from which priests should be drawn.
So older modern biblical criticism talked about the Deuteronomistic history, Joshua through Kings. We know there are problems with that designation due to later editing, but who were the writers of the Deuteronomistic history?
I mean, one could go on forever dealing with the scholarly debates and the oceans of ink that have been spilled over who wrote the book of Deuteronomy and who wrote the Deuteronomistic history. But in my own opinion, to put it as briefly as possible, I think that the groups that wrote Deuteronomy and the history that's based on it, the so-called Deuteronomistic history, represented a coalition of folks who, contrary to many modern ideas and claims, were rather from the periphery of society. They didn't represent the long-standing center of society. They were folks like priests, particularly Levitical types of priests, and from other older parts of Israel, pre-state, pre-monarchic parts of Israel, like elders, lineage heads within the clans and tribes of Israel.
So you have writers in the Pentateuch. Which kinds of priests are involved in that process?
So the Pentateuch would be Genesis through Deuteronomy, and higher criticism traditionally has divided that up into sources. And of late, within our own lifetimes, those results have been made more precise, at least some people believe they have. And so we're able to identify some of the places in society of some of the writers. And it turns out that some of the major writers behind some of these texts, like the so-called E material in Genesis and Exodus and Numbers, and the so-called D material, particularly in the book of Deuteronomy, were Levites largely, or at least members of the writing group were very inclusive of and familiar with Levitical priests.
Now tell us about the P source and the holiness code.
Right. So what historical criticism discovered from the 19th century was that there was this large body of priestly material within the Pentateuch, within the traditional.
Who are the group that writes this P material?
So what the original folks like Graf and Wellhausen and others who first isolated and identified the P material thought that they were priests in Jerusalem, looking after their own interests and such. But now we realize, there's different sources within the so-called P material, including what some people call the P or priestly Torah material, and other material that people call the H, or the Holiness School material. And they actually, when you start to look at them more closely, they're actually there are many tensions and theological disparities of perspective between those two.
And who are these two?
So one group, the Priestly Torah, seems to be associated with priests, altar priests, that we can, for convenience, call the sons of Aaron, the descendants of Aaron, the Aaronids or the Aaronites. And then the other group associated with the holiness material, I think we can associate with even more confidence with a group that are the sons of Zadok, or the Zadokite priesthood. Zadok, if you remember, was one of David's two chief priests that the Bible identifies that he, at the start of his monarchy, he placed in charge of the temple in Jerusalem. The other one was Abiathar.
So, what's the difference between the Zadokites and the Aaronids?
Yeah, so that's a little bit of a tricky question. Scholars for a long time have been working with sort of a dualistic model, that you've got priests, sacrificing priests or altar priests on the one hand, the Zadokites, and then you've got the Levites, who are a minor clergy. They didn't have altar rights, they didn't have rights to sacrifice, at least not after a certain point, and that that was a division between those two groups that constituted the priesthood in ancient Israelite religion. But I think now our newer social scientific precision has allowed us to complexify the situation so that there's a group in between the sons of Aaron, and they would be, at some point this was conceived of as a broad circle, with Levites being the overarching category, the sons of Aaron or the Aaronids being a subgroup of the Levites that had altar rights, and then as a subgroup of that, the sons of Zadok, or the Zadokite priests, which were in charge of everybody else and had very special rights and privileges and responsibilities.